Okay, Ian Trottier here. Discussions of truth, folks. No intro because I need a equipment upgrade. We'll see if that happens. It's necessary. For some reason, no live today, so this will be strictly podcast format. Bringing in now Katz. What is the deep state, folks? Let's see what Harrison has to say. We just finished with Tori Jensen, RNRD in Southern California, suing Kaiser Permanente over declining her vaccine religious exemption. Now, ringing Harrison here. There we go. Harrison Katz, ladies and gentlemen. Harrison Katz, historian on the deep state, raising a Jesuit theologian. Harrison, can you hear me? Maybe there's a delay here. Okay, I'm not hearing... Yeah. Okay, let's give this another go here. Again, we have historian Harrison Katz. See if we can bring him back on. And get this number again. See if this works. Harrison Katz, ladies and gentlemen. Ian Trottier, Discuss the Truth. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter. Donate to the show. Donate to the program. IanTrottier.com. Harry, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Fantastic. Ian Trottier here. Welcome to Discussions of Truth, sir. Please give a introduction for listeners as to who you are, sir.
All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on tonight, Mr. Trottier. My name is Harrison Katz. I'm 33 years old. I am a resident of northwestern Florida. And by day, I guess you could say, I work in the HVAC field. I'm pretty much general construction, if you want to look at that. And and by night, I guess you could say, I kind of moonlight as an amateur historian and researcher. And I specifically try to stay on the main topic of history, and specifically the Jesuit Order, the Society of Jesus, and its role in history.
Now, Harry, the reason that I learned about you and I know about you is through a former guest on the show. I had him on about 6 months ago, Eric John Phelps, and I keep tabs as to the work that he does. So that is the connection. That is how I've learned about the work that you do. And in fact, it seems that you do some great work. Amateur is light, but appropriate, I suppose. So Harry, tell people, why is it that you've decided to study and dig into the Jesuit order?
Okay. Well, I guess you could say that goes back to just as a kid, like preteens. I always knew I was being lied to, and like when I would see things on TV about how certain events, just things never sat right with me. And once I learned about the JFK assassination and the conspiracy behind that, I was hooked. And then later on in life, this is probably 10, 12 years ago, I came across Eric John Phelps' book, Vatican Assassins Wounded in the House of My Friends. And once I read that book, which it took me many, many months to finish it, it's quite the tome. But once I did that, I was so convicted that I set out to try to almost prove him wrong, or at least authenticate what it is that he wrote in that book. And to my very chagrin, it was actually really easy to do so. because the vast majority of that book is quotes and pictures, and it's just a retelling of history that has been lost to the average average person, especially American. The average American knows nothing of the Jesuit order and their power. So, I just started learning just for my own personal want and almost need to know the truth, if you will. And then later after that, I got saved. I got saved by the Lord Jesus Christ, and that furthered my conviction to actually start doing something about it. So I went from just simply emailing Eric John Phelps all the time to coming to the conclusion that, you know what, I've got so much information, I just need to start putting it out myself. So
yeah, there's a few people that dig into the Jesuit order. From my knowledge and know abouts, Eric has done some of the best work that I've personally found. But tell listeners, what is the Jesuit order? What is this? What is it, Harry?
Okay. Yeah. So when we talk about the Jesuits, what we're referring to is a Roman Catholic, quote unquote, religious order. Their official name is the Society of Jesus. Now, they were originally started, over 480 years ago, in 1534, by Ignatius Loyola, who was a Spanish Basque noble and not a Jew, which you'll hear a lot. You'll hear some people try to say he was, which he was not. But anyways, he started, and it was first known as the Knights of the Virgin Mary. Now, you want to notice that the Knights. So it was started off pretty much emulating the old Roman Catholic knighthoods, which were around at that time. It was not. They weren't started as some kind of clerical monks, right? So they were first known as the Knights of Virgin Mary. And then a couple years later, in 1540, Loyola, he got his papal bull to enter the Holy See and become part of the Roman hierarchy. And then they were then known as the Company of Jesus. Now, again, notice that terminology, company. That's another military term. All right, now, and it wasn't until I think 1553, when Loyola finally finished the constitutions of the Society of Jesus, that they actually became known as the Society of Jesus. And then after that, you had, of course, the great reformer, John Calvin, a Protestant reformer. He was the first person to term and coin the term Jesuit. So that's where we get that term. And ever since that, it was first put out as a pejorative, but they kind of picked it up and take it on as a sense of pride within the Society of Jesus. So,
and what is that?
Where the Jesuits started. Yeah.
Well, what does that mean, Harry? What is Jesuit? What does that mean?
Okay, so a Jesuit is a member, is a priest of this Roman Catholic Society of Jesus. Now, the Jesuit order, the Society of Jesus, was started. You have to understand the history of why it was started. It was started firstly for three main reasons. All right, its three main goals was to first reconquer Jerusalem for the Pope. All right, which at the time was under control of the Muslims. Number two was to destroy the Protestant Reformation, and he would do that by starting what they called the Counter-Reformation. All right, and number three was, and this is the long-term goal, is to install the Pope of Rome as like a universal monarch of the world, so that his temporal and spiritual power holds sway over all nations, all political sides, every religion, everything. So that was its main goals, and it's been steady working at it ever since. And this whole idea of the Protestant Reformation, what that has pretty much crossed into is what we see today as people talk about the destruction of Western culture, right? Well, Western culture was born out of the Protestant Reformation. So when you hear all this talk today about, destroying Western culture, what they're really talking about is trying to put the capstone on their counter Reformation and basically bring everybody back into the Dark Ages.
Harry, what does it say to you? What does it signify to you that in today in 2021, and I'm not sure when he got in the office. It was during the Obama administration, I believe. What does it mean that even though Franciscan in name, Pope Francis Mario Bergoglio, he is not Franciscan. He's a Jesuit, and he's the first Jesuit pope in the history of the Vatican, from my understanding. What does that say to you? What's that mean for listeners? What does it mean to you?
Well, here's the thing, Ian, is a lot of people who aren't familiar with this topic, I guess you could say superficially, from looking at it from the outside. I mean, the Jesuits look like this super pious, a religious order that solely, its one real sole application is like mission work and education. But that is the open but false policy. All right. So when you have, all right, first of all, Jesuit Pope Francis, his surname that he took, Bergoglio, Francis is actually, it's not from Francis of Assisi, it's from Francis Xavier, which was one of the original Jesuits. So that's where he took his name from. And the fact that he is a Jesuit of the professed fourth vow means that he takes his orders directly, even as the quote, white pope, he takes his orders directly from the quote, black pope, which is the superior general of the Society of Jesus. So the Jesuits have always, since at least, let's say, since their reestablishment and was 1816, after their suppression, they have always ruled behind the scenes. They were always the confessors to the Pope. But now with this Jesuit Pope Francis, you have an outright Jesuit sitting in the office of Pope who is absolutely subordinate to his superior general. So that's the significance of it.
What does it mean for Jesuits in America? And let's look at some of the leadership positions here today, Harry. Is there anything sticking out at you and alarming you? We've got more of a political divide in this country than I certainly have ever remembered, and thrown into that mix is some health crisis, which has become politicized, and mask wearing has become politicized. Identify some of the leaders that stick out at you as possibly being associated. You know that Biden met with the Pope just a few weeks ago. What alarms you? What sticks out at you?
Well, I'll tell you this. And taking this beyond America, this is not just an American problem. Though America is the current superpower that the Jesuits are using to enact their political and geopolitical warfare all over the world. But it's not just an American problem. This is a worldwide problem in every single country. So me being American, I just know the specifics of this American intrigue. So to answer your question, let's start off with Joe Biden. I mean, he's an open Roman Catholic. He has 2 honorary degrees from Jesuit universities, I believe, Scranton University out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. He has an honorary degree from them, and he also has one from, I think, St. Joseph's in Philadelphia, both Jesuit schools. Now, on the flip side of that coin, you have Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump, he went to Fordham University, which is a Jesuit university, but he only went there for 1 year. But he sent 2 or 3 of his kids to Jesuit schools. Same with Biden. Biden sent, I think, Hunter Biden went to Jesuit Georgetown, I think. He went to a Jesuit school, but Hunter Biden was also, or is also, a member of the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. So that's just the executive. I mean, you go into, let's go into the legislative, the congressional. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, where she's out of San Francisco. I mean, the Jesuits rule San Francisco out of San Francisco University. They're also right there across the bay there in Silicon Valley at Santa Clara University, controlling all the high-tech software firms and technological firms there. Let's see, multiple governors. I mean, if people are interested, if they want to see the Jesuit connection, what you have to do is you look at not only somebody's political affiliations, but look where they went to school. Look where they went to school. If they went to a Jesuit university, then it's very likely that they are being handled, maybe not directly from like a Jesuit priest, because the Jesuits try to keep everything like between, they try to keep a third party in between them and us. So it's very hard for us to point the fingers directly at them. So they use these trusted third parties. So that's all you have to do is just look at where these people went to school, and then also look at their actions and look at where their allegiances truly lie. And it's never for the people. They're always serving some other agenda, but people think it's, just the Masons or the Illuminati. But, not enough people, nearly not enough people are looking where blame needs to be at the Society of Jesus.
So, Harry, I just ended with an RN in Southern California. She's got a legal fight on her side. She's suing Kaiser Permanente in that state for not honoring her religious exemption letter for vaccine freedom. So she was just yesterday terminated. Do you see this constitutional element on a national scale that says that we all have religious freedom? Do you see that coming under fire today? And are you able to link it to this Jesuit army?
Well, my take on what goes on. Okay, so this I'm going to try to make this brief because it's actually a really long-winded answer. So bear with me as I try to get my thoughts together. All right. What people think about the Constitution as it applies to an American today is actually one giant. It's a giant psyop to Americans. It's part of the national propaganda. So this is a big. I mean, people have so much history to learn, and this is one of the big things that I learned from Eric John Phillips, and that is that America is not what it was when our founders found this country and signing the Constitution. The Constitution for the U.S. citizen has been set aside since March 9th, 1933, when FDR first took, and it was in fact a New Deal. And what actually, in the simplest terms, it was supposed to be a temporary emergency to combat the then Great Depression. Now, the twist, if you would, is that the quote unquote temporary emergency, they never ended it. They in fact codified it, made it part of the U.S. Code, and it's been in effect ever since. Now, we have actually many different ongoing national emergencies, but the one from 1933 is still in effect. As a matter of fact, I believe the president has to re-sign that emergency into law. Maybe, I don't think it's every year, but I think it's every 4 years. Every time, either it's a new president or a re-elected president. And for that matter, the president is no longer the president. The president is the commander in chief. That is that's the head of all the army. That's not a peacetime title. So that's why whenever you have an inauguration, the president, they play Hail the Chief, because he is the commander in chief, because we are not at peace. We have been in a constant state of emergency, which in the law is the same as a state of war. So I say all that to say this. When you talk about religious freedom and all this pontificating that you see on the TV and in the news, all these people, even the lawyers and the judges that you see, these pundits, they're all just giving lip service, and none of them are telling us the truth. The truth is that under these emergency war powers that the Constitution is set aside, and that all the things that we think are rights are actually privileges that are granted by the state, so they can take them away. They can take them away, and what we're going to see play out on the TV and in the media is just like it's like a game show we're going to see in these courtrooms, and I have a very bad feeling that they're not going to go the way that a lot of people think they're going to go. They think, oh well, the Constitution is going to stand strong and we shall prevail. But I mean, I just understanding what the government's true relationship to its citizens is is key in understanding what is really going on with this, quote, pandemic today, Ian.
There was a flag committee assembled in 1775, and Washington and Franklin were part of it. There were two other people. There was an individual from Europe known as the Professor, per the diary of the woman where the meeting was held in Cambridge. And some of this comes from two sources: a fellow named Walter Veith, and then also a book named Our Flag, or Our Flags, by Greg Campbell, I believe is the name. Are you?
You said Our Flags?
I believe it's named Our Flags.
Greg Campbell?
Greg Campbell.
Campbell, okay. All right, continue.
And Harry, what was alarming is that this professor figure, in regards to Walter Veith, is that it's surmised that that this figure was one Lorenzo Ricci. Are you familiar with this name, Ricci, R-I-C-C-I?
Yeah, I am. That was the superior general of the Society of Jesus at the time of its suppression in 1773.
So, if we fast forward to the 1930s with FDR, and the Constitution is, it sounds like you said, suspended or put aside.
It's temporarily set aside, yeah.
And the United States, as we know it, has been at war. Who's it at war with, Harry?
Well, that's a great question, Ian. It is actually at war with its own citizens. With its own citizens. You see, what happened during what was known as the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which was approved and confirmed on, I believe, March 9th, 1933. What that did, Ian, was that amended a World War I statute that was known as the Trading with the Enemy Act. All right, now, during World War I, when that act was first put in place, it had nothing to do with business within the United States, except for certain countries that were operating in the United States. But what FDR's administration did with the Emergency Banking Relief Act was they amended that Trading with the Enemy Act and brought it inside the U.S. to apply to all commercial transactions and anyone who takes place in them. So that's why you have the start of the Social Security, which is really social, quote-unquote, social insurance. That's why you have that, so everybody can be in commerce. That's why you have the start of these birth certificates and what certain patriot movements have come to call the straw man, which is really just a surety. I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think you are answering the question. He did help define it in regards to
right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's, we are the enemies. That's who the country is at war with. So every quote U.S. citizen is considered an enemy belligerent. All right, and this is what these courts aren't telling you. Now, this is all in the law. All right, so when you go on the news and you hear these pundits talk about the law and the Constitution, they're never going to tell you any of this stuff. The only way you can find this is by going and looking at actually what the acts that were passed during the New Deal, and then how they were codified, and then also the subsequent Supreme Court rulings that upheld these views. And there's just too much to go into, with all this. But to answer your question, yeah, the U.S. government is at war with its own citizens.
So let's speed up to today. And actually, you know what? You'd mentioned the JFK conspiracy. Shed a little light on that. I've actually, frankly, I've been in Dallas. I just returned from Dallas a couple days ago, and I've been in Dallas 3 times in the past year. What, in your view, why was it a conspiracy to kill JFK, and who's behind the conspiracy? And neither you or I have mentioned theory. We're talking conspiracy. That's an organized effort to to destroy or achieve an objective in a secretive manner.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, people get tried in courts of law for conspiracy every day, every single day. So yeah, this whole idea of conspiracy theory. Well, yeah, what we're talking about, we're using these facts to establish right conclusions. So, but anyways, I digress. The JFK assassination, in my estimation, I mean, JFK being the first Catholic president, and his father, Joseph Kennedy, who was a member of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, which is the ancient Catholic knighthood, which are based out of the diplomatic state of Malta in the Mediterranean there. Joseph P. Kennedy was a Knight of Malta. He was instrumental in causing the Great Depression and short selling with a couple other Irish Roman Catholics there, and he was also involved in a lot of the bootlegging. So he was a tool for the Jesuit order in this country, and his connections, along with certain mob connections, helped get President Kennedy elected in the office. You know, with election rigging, that was going. This whole idea of faulty elections is nothing new in this country. But anyway, so JFK gets elected, but something happens when he's in office, and he starts going against a lot of what the overall playbook is. And I have my own theories as to what that is. I know Eric John Phelps has, his book, Wounded in the House, Vatican Assassins, Wounded in the House of My Friends. The main theme of that book is how he shows and proves, in my estimation, that Archbishop Cardinal Spellman out of New York helped orchestrate and plan the whole JFK assassination. Now, I don't disagree with him on that, but where I kind of differ as far as his motivations. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the last show that I did on 247worldradio.com this last Monday, but I went over the book or the report from Iron Mountain on the possibility and desirability of peace. Now, I recommend any of your listeners who aren't familiar with that, go read that book. And the reason why I bring it up in regards to JFK was he was actually the one who ordered that special study group to convene. All right, it was first put together in like late '62, early '63 is when they started. But he, of course, was killed in November of '63, and then it wasn't published to the public until '67. But when you read that report, you understand it sheds a lot of light on what Eisenhower called the industrial war complex in America, and it's really intriguing. It actually goes through and shows that war permeates all of our society more than just settling international disputes, but that it affects us environmentally, affects us culturally, affects us ecologically, scientifically. I mean, there's all kinds of secondary and main effects that this war not just war economy, but this war system has on our country. And I think that JFK saw that, and I think that he was basically trying to pull a stop to it. He was trying to pull out of Vietnam. He was apparently wanting to go against the Federal Reserve. He was making a lot of enemies, and I think they decided that it would be better to cut their losses and kill him. And who would suspect the Roman Catholic Church to kill the first Catholic president or be behind the orchestration of it? But in understanding the Jesuits' control in the JFK assassination, you really have to understand the Jesuits' control in the U.S. international intelligence community. Wild Bill Donovan, who started the OSS, he was a Knight of Malta, I think also a Bonesman. You had Angleton, who oversaw during World War II, who oversaw the Vatican and the Israeli desk. He was a Knight of Malta, and a devoted Catholic. You've had several heads of the CIA have been Knights of Malta. So there's a reason why the CIA has been called within its own inner circle the Catholics in action. Not only see an eagle clutching a silver key, and if you go somewhere on their website, they will explain the meaning of that symbolism, and it's the power of Peter's binding and loosing.
Unbelievable.
That's what the NSA says. Yeah, so you see that there is a heavy Vatican connection. Well, I mean, it's really no surprise if you look at it, because if you look at what the Vatican's international confessional system, that's nothing more than an intelligence network in itself. So this has always been built into the Catholic hierarchy, and the Jesuits have just taken it to the nth degree with all this technology that they have at their fingertips now. So,
how do you fold in, Harry? How do you fold in what's happening in 2021 with this pandemic? Let me ask you this. How do you define? How do you specifically, rather? How do you define the deep state? What is the deep state to you? We had 8 years of Obama with these very socialistic policy making, and under his watch, it was Pope Francis, the first pope, regardless of being a Jesuit, that had ever stepped foot in the Constitutional Hall in Philadelphia. It was under Obama's watch that happened. From my view, it's kind of a slap in the face to those Protestants and Quakers and whatever it may have been that developed that institution. But now you've got Trump, right? Now you've got Trump, or you had Trump. We had Trump for 4 years. There was Trump for 4 years, talking about deep state and fake news. I didn't hear any president prior to him ever speak about that. Not me. So what is, we look at fake news and we look at the contrast and this narratives and the narrative reporting that is done on both sides. It's, they've purposely divided the country because it's obviously profitable for them to some degree. But what is this deep state, Harry? What is that?
Well, the way I look at it, Ian, is the deep state in the simplest terms would be this emergency war powers military government since 1933 has just been completely off the rails. All right, and ever since the end of World War II and the start of the start of the so-called Cold War, which was really a hoax. There was no Cold War. It was, both Russia or the USSR and the USA were, worked together behind the scenes with their intelligence agencies. But what the deep state really is you see, our deep state, we have the same deep state that many other countries have. This is what people don't realize. The U.S. intelligence network is the most powerful intelligence network. Though it is controlled by the Jesuits, we are the most technologically advanced country in the world. So when I talk about the deep state, really what the deep state is, it's a combination of things. You have AI supercomputers who are collecting massive amounts of data on everybody, storing it and correlating it. So you have that going on. You also have certain people who in the intelligence agencies who are overseeing everything, including our elections. I mean, you talked about the Pope coming to Philadelphia under Obama. Okay, well, Obama was a Democrat, right? Well, how about Ronald Reagan, who was the Republican poster child in 1984, officially opened up diplomatic relations with the Vatican by officially recognizing Vatican City. And that was the first time that had happened in over 100. It's over 120, 130 years since the Civil War, because politicians then, at the end of the Civil War, had a horrible taste in their mouth because they knew the Jesuits and the Vatican were behind the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, and so they did not even have any official diplomatic relations with with the Holy See, with the Vatican, until Reagan in 1984. So what the deep state really is, it's a bunch of AI supercomputers. It's a bunch of actors that we call politicians. They have no allegiance to red or blue, left or right. All they serve is green, and ultimately they're afraid of men. They're afraid to die. So they do what they're told. And then on top of that, you have a lot more super advanced technology that comes along with certain programs like propaganda. The whole propaganda machine. That's part of the deep state. That's how you get the sheeple to follow along with what they want us to do. It's mainly through propaganda. And then you have the military. And then you have the U.S. military and its military presence and all its arms and all its FEMA camps and all its overseas military bases. I mean, it's all of that. It's the deep state is international. It's not just here in the U.S. When you understand that all these intelligence agencies are working together behind the scenes, then that's really what the deep state is, in my estimation.
So if the NSA logo has an eagle clutching a key, and they're openly stating some type of an allegiance, it sounds, to St. Peter. Is that right, if I got that right?
They say it symbolizes Peter's power of binding and loosing.
So
right, and we all know that it's the Pope who claims to be the Vicar of Christ and sit on St. Peter's throne, or St. Peter's chair in Rome, and claims to have the power to bind and loose things in heaven and on earth. So to me it's an obvious illusion without outright saying it.
Is it possible that the Jesuit order is behind this somehow? At the NSA?
Oh, for sure. Well, I would say this: if you have, the Jesuit order is like the shock troops of the Vatican for the Pope. Wherever you see them openly involved in something, you know they run it. Whenever you see any kind of, you can't really call it Christian symbolism, but when you see the quote-unquote Catholic, Roman Catholic symbolism, especially in like government agencies, you see where their real allegiance lies. An agency like the NSA with that kind of insignia and slogan, no way that would have been able to have been created, 200 years ago. People would have ran out in the streets and protest, because back then Americans knew the power of the Jesuit order, and many Americans wrote books about it. But all that history's been whitewashed.
So you've made a statement that the federal government out of D.C. broke their ties with the Vatican because of a knowledge that the Jesuits were behind the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Is there credibility behind that statement? What can you provide? What evidence can you provide for?
Oh, there absolutely is. Well, I can. I'm sorry. There are. When it comes to almost anything I say about the Jesuit order, especially claims in its history, it can all be proven, or strong evidence to that conclusion can be shown to you through old books, older books that were written a lot of them written in the 18th century, hundreds, if not thousands of them written on the order in the 19th century, the 1800s, and then a few, not so many, written in the early 20th century. But it's during that time period, during the 19th century, you can find a huge quantity of information on the Society of Jesus and its history from that time. Now, are we running up on the end of this hour? Because I do not have the name of that book on the top of my head. I think it's the Engineer Corps of Hell? I think that might be it. A book called The Engineer Corps, C-O-R-P, Engineer Corps of Hell. The author's name escapes me, but I'll have to email you some supplement information with some books and some citations on that, Ian.
That sounds great. As we wind down here, Harrison, as we wind down, I simply want you make a tie-in to, well, it was on an episode of Eric John Phelps, I believe, that he was talking about the protocols for the learned elders of Zion, and he mentions in protocol number 10 the inoculation of masses. Are you familiar with this protocol, and do you have some comments about that in regards to these vaccinations?
I have heard Eric say that. It's been a while since I've read the protocols, but I no doubt if he said that on air, then that's a direct quote from them. But I will say this: I see it as no coincidence at all, because I think the protocols are one of the guide books openly, one of the documents that can be openly looked at by the not really uneducated, but really just ignorant people who are ignorant of the Jesuit order can look to the protocols in their, in the fact that many of them are being actually carried out, but subscribe them to the Jews who supposedly wrote them in the first place, which they did not. The protocols were actually authored by the Society of Jesus. So, yeah, but that goes back to one of its core. It's been almost like a tenet. I don't even know what the right way to call it is, but the Jesuits have always taught hatred for the Jewish people, for the race of the Jewish people. They're known as Christ killers to them, and ever since their inception, whenever they would go out to these different countries, they would always put on these plays. They were, put on these actual plays, and one of the plays they would put on every time would be the Passion. And the reason why they would always do this Passion play was so that they could point out that the Jews were, quote, Christ killers. So the Jews are always the Jesuit scapegoats, and tying that into what's going to happen with all these inoculations, it's my belief, Ian, that what is actually happening is they're trying to set up a like, if you want to think of it like a patsy New World Order, kind of like an Oswald, like they did with Oswald, right? A patsy New World Order that they're going to try to say that the Jews run. So again, to point fingers away from the Jesuit order.
Harrison, are we in more of a religious holy war right now by a crusade, a Jesuit crusade, than we are a health crisis?
Well, I would say absolutely. I mean, it's just from my faith, Ian, I believe, as the Bible says, that, we're in a spiritual warfare every day, constantly. And I also believe, because of my faith in the Bible, that these men, because it's all men religious order, or really military company, these men, I believe, are absolutely infused with the power of the devil, with Satan himself, and that they are his first cause. When the devil wants men to do something, the Jesuits are the first cause that he turns to, and he set them up in this world for that exact purpose. Now, as far as this health crisis, that's highly debatable, and it's a shame because, like you said when we first started this talk, a lot of it's been politicized, and therefore a lot of the information that's put out there is it's subjective. A lot of people aren't going off good information, and they're not taking it objectively. It's all subjective. It's all emotional. So, in my estimation, where I live in Florida, Ian, there is no health crisis here in Florida. There is none. That's just as simple as that. Now, people can say what they want about this state, but I can just tell you from where I'm at, there is no health crisis. So, as far as the engineering of it, this, again, I believe this goes back to the report from Iron Mountain. This also goes back to the report from the Club of Rome, which came out in, I think, '72 with a report called The Limits of Growth. And they all talk about the same stuff. It's population control. They have to control the population in their mind because we're running out of resources, apparently. And of course, not only that, but we're destroying quote unquote Mother Earth. So if there is a health crisis to the Jesuits, I'll tell you this: they're not looking at some kind of airborne microscopic pathogen. They view men. They view us as the real virus. So if you want to look at it as some kind of like cruel and sadistic euphemism, then yeah, there is a health crisis to the Jesuits, and it's us, and they want to eradicate it. So,
Harrison, thanks for joining the program, and I want to give you an opportunity to leave listeners with some final thoughts. What would you like listeners to walk away with?
Well, I would encourage everyone listening to don't believe anything I say. Go if what you heard here tonight, if it sounds interesting, or if you just want to prove me wrong, then I suggest you go read and study about the Society of Jesus for yourself, and do some serious research, because it can pay off in dividends. And I would also say to listen to my show on 247worldradio.com. I'm live every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, and I've got some really interesting stuff to say. And also, I have a YouTube channel, Harry Katz, where I also put up some videos. I try to archive all my shows, but also put up some original videos sometimes. But again, I don't have a book to sell. I'm not looking to make any money off this, and I just want to thank you, Ian, for inviting me on the show, and I had a great time.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, sir.
All right. God bless you, sir.
Harry Katz, and yeah, he's on YouTube. It's Katz, folks. Katz. It was about 6 months ago. I spent when the Zika virus came into Miami Beach in 2016. Look, I was totally ignorant, and I remember being bit by a mosquito and freaking out. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get the Zika virus. Yeah, it was a benign virus, unless you're a pregnant woman, and then the likelihood of microcephaly for the child was increased. But nonetheless, the propaganda machine locally, through the media, had people on pins and needles. But it was a good friend of mine who happened to be mentioned this before on the program. He was a gay Jew. He's now deceased. But he's the one that got me involved in the local debate. We went down to the town hall meeting. He invited me. I accepted. And from there, I saw the Rockefeller involvement, owning a patent on the Zika virus, the extraction process, I believe it is, and then also owning Chevron Chemical Corporation, the developers of the pesticide, and Ricky Roseo out of Puerto Rico, the MIT grad governor, rejecting the shipment from the World Health Organization of the pesticide. There's just too many things that would caught my interest, and then I was then led to the Stanford Hoover Fellow that walked away from Stanford for being censored in the early 70s, Anthony Sutton, and that's how the program had started. But over the course of time, over the years, it's now been almost 5 years since I did the very first show. I did the first show January 4th, 2017. It's coming up here, just a couple of weeks from that, and over the period of time, I kept asking myself, since the pandemic came about, I thought, because that helped focus my thinking, and I thought, who would have the sophistication, who would have the intelligence, who would have the networking, who would have the historical power, who would have this in place to be able to pull off a hoax or a plan on that level, on this international level. And I kept asking myself and thinking to myself, and you know, I mean, all roads that lead to Rome, and certainly I'd found the banking trail through the Federal Reserve to the City of London, back to Rome. I'd already gotten that. That had been a few years ago. But to have this type of sophistication in place meant that you needed to be a global power one way or another. I'm not speaking physically. And that is when I began looking into corruption in the Vatican. Because I thought, North and South America are all built on a crusade. That's just the way it is, folks. If you speak English or Spanish, French, or you speak any of the European-based languages, romantic languages, or romantic influenced languages, if you speak any of them, then you are somewhat of a product of a crusade or of the Crusades. That's undeniable. And all of the Crusades, regardless of your flag, regardless of the country, my ancestry is French and English and Scottish, but the last name is French. But all of them were acting under the name of God. And so what's the large umbrella? The Vatican. The Vatican. And that's when it dawned on me, about 6-7 months ago. And then that's what led me to Eric John Phelps, this theologian out of Pennsylvania. And I invited him on. And over the course of the past half of a year, I have kept tabs on some of the work that he's done. And that's when I'd mentioned Walter Vaith, and that's also now how I brought this Harrison Katz onto the program. Because, folks, everything that I'm seeing is that crusade is still active. And prove the information wrong is what I say. Prove the information wrong. What you cannot do right now is you cannot discover the shareholders of the Federal Reserve Central Bank. And the Federal Reserve Central Bank is unconstitutional. Needs to be repealed, just like Anthony Sabatini said about 7-8 weeks ago on the show. And it's a private bank. It's a private bank that dictates a public government. That's called monopoly. That in itself is a tyranny. And the day is nigh. America, you are under a full-scale attack. You're in a full-scale attack. And I urge you to please listen to Dan Watkins and Tori Jensen, who I ended with last hour. He's a lawyer and she's an RN. They're fighting the denial of being, the denial of having their religious exemption denied, rather. They're fighting their religious exemption to being denied. That's a better way to say it. From Kaiser Permanente in California. Dan's representing Tori. This is absurd. And if you peel back the layers, folks, I'm urging you to look into the Society of Jesuits, the Jesuits. Look into what they have taken an oath to do, and they do that in defense of their religion. That is what they are trained to do, is infiltrate governments and take them over in the name of the Vatican. And that is their belief in God. And just like Tori's being told that her employer, former, can define what religion means according to them, and they can deny her a religious exemption based on whether they agree with her religion or not. Oh, that's not only unconstitutional, folks. That is an inalienable. That's a defiance of an inalienable right, because no one, I don't care who your prophet is, and I don't care who your pope is, I don't care who speaks or spoke to God that you trust, I don't care who it is, none of you, none, no human being, none can define God for someone else. Period. And so anytime you allow someone else to define God and religion for you, you're doing that based on your own decision and your own choice. It is your choice to succumb to, I'll say, or allow those definitions and those interpretations of someone else, you're allowing them to be a choice of yours and part of the way you view reality. But no one has the right to do it because no one can. So I urge you to look into, if this interests you, someone named Jordan Maxwell. He joined my show about 2 years ago, a little under, January 2nd it was, of 2020. He joined me. I believe he's still around. He's probably 81 now. And he talks about how man has manipulated the reflection of the mechanics of the solar system. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that your religion is not right. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that religion or any Christian or faithful or Islamic, I'm not saying that any belief in God is not right. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that no one has the right to define it for someone else, because no one can. No one can. No human being is God. No human being is God. Okay? Now, I do not mean to infringe upon your belief in God, because I don't care about your belief in God. As you preach and pray, and you do what you want to do with your life in regards to God and how you believe God is and define God, that's your choice. And I honor your choice, and I respect your choice, and I will fight for your choice, as long as you do so peacefully. But the second you infringe on my belief, that's when we have a problem. And we have a problem now, a big problem on a large scale in this country. And Tory Jensen is an example of that. And that's where we are, folks. And so I urge you, I exhort that you do understand the power, the networking, the intelligence, the sophistication behind what can be termed as an ancient religious order known as God's army, a militant order that wants nothing more than to conform you to their beliefs. This is true. This is true. Undeniable truth. It's called the Society of Jesus. So is it they that are engineering and controlling the mechanics of the deep state? That's why I'm asking you to do your research, because it seems highly possible. It seems like it certainly is. Okay? Seems like it certainly is. And to that, I will say you're wasting, I say wasting your time, but you need, if you're going down the Chinese angle, go down the Chinese angle, but look further than the Chinese angle, because the Chinese are being controlled by a central bank as of 1945, which is subservient to the Bank of International Settlements out of Basel, Switzerland, which is controlled by Vatican financiers. So yes, the Chinese may be a threat, but that's very likely no coincidence. It's by design. And the United States has been building that military up for decades. The Nike shoes, all these products, all these clothes, everything's made in China. That's done by design. Okay, so I'm going to be in Phoenix this weekend, folks. I'm going to be in Phoenix this weekend, and between now and then, I will get this microphone issue situated so I can go live. If I can't go live, then I only go live, and I do simply podcasts. Either way, the voice is getting out, and the voice is being heard, and things are happening. We are doing good things. You agree with you or not? The work that's being done is making a difference. So until next time, folks, thanks for tuning in. Spread the message, pass the word on. Go to Harry Katz's YouTube channel, give him some support. Go do some research on Tory Jensen. And again, until next time, folks, be awesome.